The Epstein files are getting worse. Video by Boyzilla. Yeah, man, so there was a new release in the Epstein files, right? These aren't the type of files that we speak on too often, but it's actually getting out of hand. It's been getting out of hand, to be honest, but the names that have just been revealed.
What?
The truth is here. The reckoning has come.
From here, we're going back into the 3 million.
But you know, the thing about it is, the Donald Trump fans don't give a fuck.
Documents. So far, we mostly covered how billionaires lied about their relationship with Epstein and/or got blackmailed in the drafts, eventually killing their marriage. We talked about Howard Lutnick, how he lied about meeting Epstein, although he still denies this. And we also talked about some horrible accusations against Trump and Bill Clinton, although we were clear that they are unverified. Now, some people have responded to the release, like Elon Musk, saying that no one fought harder for the full release of the Epstein files than I did. Ironically, he claims that he knew that the playbook of the far-left propagandists and legacy media is admit nothing, deny everything, and making counter accusations, saying he had never set foot on Epstein's creepy island or attended parties, despite the fact we saw last time that Elon was asking to be invited to the party. What day night would be the wildest party on your island? Nevertheless, I think it's an interesting point. The playbook, as we get into this much darker side of the 3.5 million files, you're going to notice this trend is true, that everyone we're going to talk about, basically they admit nothing, they deny everything, and then they usually make counter accusations against other people in the files. Almost no one has faced any kind of
I mean, bro, nobody wants to get exposed for being on these files, bro. So they just gonna try to throw somebody else under the bus. Or maybe they all had a meeting like, hey, bro, this is the plan. We all gonna stick to this plan.
consequences for this whole thing, leading me to wonder, why is it that it seems like really only in the rest of the world has anyone faced anything? I mean, you've got the former Prince Andrew losing his title. You've got the Slovakia National Security Advisor resigning over the Epstein links. But in America, I'm really hard pressed to think of anyone who has actually faced any kind of accountability. I think Larry Summers stepped back voluntarily. But other than that, it's hard to think of anyone who's faced any kind of justice. In fact, arguably, Ghislaine Maxwell's life is better than it was previously since these Epstein files have dropped. And what's crazy about this is that we know that the government story is false. Remember, the FBI documents showed they had 10 co-conspirators they were investigating. We also got an old draft of an indictment where they had several co-defendants with Epstein. Now, of course, we know these were never ultimately charged. This was back in 2005, but just imagine, all the way back in 2005, where these charges are from, we already had evidence that Epstein was not working alone, and like, of course he's not. But now we're gonna talk a little bit about how the scheme operated. Now, to be clear, we're gonna talk in a second about the laundering of Epstein's reputation, the people who protected him this whole time. But right now, I wanna talk about how Epstein got some of these girls in the first place, because the Epstein files provide an interesting look behind the curtains. Obviously, we know Ghislaine Maxwell was helping, whether it be procure the girls, talk them into stuff. But now we have emails of a different side of the scheme. It says, yesterday I spoke to Daniel Syed, who Jean-Luc Brunel describes as a scout or recruiter of girls or women for Jeffrey Epstein. Attached to this incoming email from Brunel is the contact information he has for Syed. And then they blacked out his number and email. But digging into Jeffrey's emails with Daniel shows that he was constantly sending him links to girls. It shows Jeffrey Epstein paying Daniel 3,000 euros, which, to be clear, was the amount that was agreed to by Jean-Luc Brunel. Quote, Dominique, we will pay him 3,000 euros each month for scouting for a 6-month period. On all models we will get him, we will pay him 5% commission on their earnings. Imagine it's like baseball or it's like basketball. You're scouting for, I hate to use the word talent, but that's really what this guy was doing. He was going around the globe trying to find people for Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. According to one lawsuit, Epstein trafficked a Jane Doe to Jean-Luc Brunel many times. It describes their operation as this: many of the girls came from poor countries or impoverished backgrounds. He lured them in with a promise of making good money. Quote, Brunel has been a model scout for various modeling agencies.
Yeah, man, the thing is, bro, everybody who was involved in Epstein Island is just as guilty as Epstein, bro. Y'all over here scouting talent for the man, bro. That's just sick, man.
For many years, and he was apparently able to get U.S. passports for young girls to work as models, eventually, of course, being sent to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it should be noted that Jean-Luc Brunel himself died in prison by hanging, and that's while he was being accused of horrible crimes related to trafficking and minors. So this guy is not a good guy.
I mean, he couldn't deal with it, bro. In jail, they can see your paperwork, bro. And you know what they do to them PDFs, bro.
He was part of the op along with Daniel Syed, who was also scouting on behalf of
take
Epstein
accountability
and Jean-Luc
for what
Brunel.
he did,
They had
so
their
he deleted
agreement.
it.
Here's a sample
That's
of how
the
this
coward
would
way
work.
out.
Jeffrey Epstein asked him to take a full body shot of someone. Daniel Syed says, now she is really skinny, I will do Polaroid. Jeffrey Epstein asks for a copy of her passport and then asks, how many tickets do you want for Woody, meaning Woody Allen? He says 2. Okay, thank you. Full body if possible. And then Jeffrey Epstein says, doesn't look too happy. Comments on her body. And then he says she is very sweet. I'll skip a few of the sordid details here. They comment about her body extensively. And then Jeffrey Epstein says, I sent a request. Does she want to come out to Paris on Sunday? He says, I will invite to come. And this is basically how it worked. Daniel Syed flew around the world looking for women, sending photos to Jeffrey Epstein, who then would get copy of their passports and bring him to the States. Here's an example of this. Daniel Syed brings him a girl. They didn't redact this name, but I'm going to do it. He says, very nice, easygoing, dream to work in the United States or visit the United States working as a model in Dubai. He asks age. Daniel says 22 or 23. I forgot to ask her.
Hey, my dude. Yeah, man, we're seeing time and time again what happens when these females go to Dubai, man. You know, either you're getting defecated or urinated on.
She looks younger. I have her number if you want to call her. She was going to send this evening. And this happens over and over. At one point, he talks about a Thai actress. Jeffrey Epstein says he can see her on Wednesday, and then he complains that she wants to meet in a restaurant. I don't do that in New York, and then says she didn't even respond. Not nice. The point is, a lot of these girls were looking to come to the United States for one reason or another, for some kind of dream. They would ask for passports or visas, and then ultimately get sent here by this network of people who would later be accused of trafficking or other abuses. Now, to be clear, there have not been charges against Daniel Syed, and the government, remember, says they have no evidence to go even predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So it's a little bit bizarre to be reading about this scouting operation for Jeffrey Epstein, the way he recruited girls, and then be told, yeah, nothing to see here. Yeah, one of the scouts was like this, like, who himself in jail. But no, there's no one else here, even though there's definitely guys floating around. Even though we literally have redacted defendants in our old draft of an indictment. We have nothing to do. We can't possibly imagine doing anything. And that brings me to one of the frustrating parts of these whole files is the redactions. I mean, I know I've been over this, but it's a different thing. In the past, the files were sort of overly redacted to protect people. The problem this time is not only are a lot of people still being protected, like literally the names of the people they were going to charge, you couldn't argue those are victims, but the work was just done so sloppy that oftentimes you'll find that the DOJ has uploaded 2 documents that are functionally identical and they redacted one but not the other, letting you see what's ultimately behind the mask, which is dumb because sometimes the thing they're redacting is Jeffrey Epstein's name. Or other times it's somebody who clearly is not a victim because then you see the non-redacted copy and you're like, yeah, that's clearly not a victim. So it's a little strange what they seem to have done here. Let me give you a for instance. So we have this message from somebody whose name is blacked out, and we see participants, and then we see Jeffrey Epstein is involved, right? And it says, we need to work around your 38. We need to push back on the lies, then crush the pedo trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as a philanthropist. Now, I want to know who's doing that? Who's trying to rebuild Jeffrey Epstein's image, right? Well, we go ahead, we scroll down, and we see that Jeffrey Epstein sends something. He says, in any bar where drinking age is 18, and you see the participant is once again blacked out. But underneath it, in a separate file, we see Steve Bannon, a famous political figure, is in here, and he's saying the same thing. He says, first, we need to push back on the lies, then crush the trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as a philanthropist. Guys, why did you censor out his name? Or, like, why was that censored at all? I don't understand. And I certainly don't understand why Jeffrey Epstein's name in this one is censored. So Jeffrey's not censored in this one, but Bannon is. And then Bannon's not censored in this one. Epstein is. And sometimes this creates the bizarre impression that they are censoring for victim names or for some like kind of victim status or.
Yeah. I mean, you just seeing what they said, bro. Deny everything, da-da-da-da-da. And I think the last one was like, pretty much blame somebody else. So that's what they're doing, bro. They're using the format.
For some reason. And then you see the other file and you're like, wait, why did you do this? It's just very poorly done throughout. That's just something I wanted to comment on, is not only did they once again not fully redact things because they were sloppy, but also like victims' names got stuck in this. Like girls' names appear sometimes, and like I'm not sure, are they supposed to be redacted? Because they're redacted over here. They're not over here. I can kind of figure out who it is. It's just kind of a mess. I needed to point that out. You know, other times we have things like this, like Brock Pierce, a co-founder of Tether, also known as the biggest stablecoin in the world. He sent a message to Jeffrey Epstein with the subject line Anastasia, and then it's just a bunch of redacted stuff with a few untitled JPEGs in here. And so, you know, you're thinking to yourself, what is this? Is he sending some illicit media? Like, what is this? Well, then we have this page where it wasn't redacted. I put that little dark square that I didn't know if this should have been redacted or not. But it's like a bunch of JPEGs. Now, does that contain victims? Is Brock Pierce sending photos of victims? I don't know because of the way the government did this. But underneath, it says, the Ukraine is now my favorite country, smiley face, Brock Pierce, with the subject line Anastasia. I don't know what to make of that. I'm just saying the redactions, like the way they did this is not good. But now let's return to Steve Bannon and his we're gonna crush the trafficking narrative, because this guy, oh boy, has been revealed in the files to being like Jeffrey's right-hand PR man. I mean, this guy was filming basically a documentary about Jeffrey Epstein in order to rehabilitate his image. And some of it has actually leaked to the public. It's been interesting to watch how that's been received. But the funny thing is that originally Jeffrey Epstein's plan was to just do a YouTube video, like an apology, like a old school 2016, turn on the camera for authenticity and saying, you know, he says, do you think I can do my own video interview and upload it to YouTube? No sandbagging, interview format, or like a diary piece. Steve Bannon says if you do an interview, it can't be like Johnny does a YouTube. It has to be amazingly professional and perfectly cut. Then Jeffrey Epstein responds, Woody, we assume Woody Allen, because they were close, said he would help edit. Not sure how to stage, what points to make. But better than trying to do an interview that I have no experience doing. Goal is to humanize the monster. Anything written carries little weight, to which Steve Bannon replies, yes, Jeffrey Epstein, should it be an interview format, interviewed by me? They start talking about, like, how do we do this? Humor, apology, how did I get rich? Question mark, topics.
Oh, yeah, I mean, these guys know they're wrong, bro. And they trying so hard to come up with a plan to do damage control.
They're brainstorming, how do we trick the public into seeing me as more than a monster? Now, funny enough, right before this, Jeffrey Epstein asks about a dinner with Woody, and then he says, or too many pedos in one place. And you gotta love the self-awareness there. Now, I don't know what he meant by that. To be clear, I'm not making that accusation against Woody Allen. We'll talk about him in a second. That's Jeffrey Epstein saying that. I think what's interesting to point out, though, is how all these rich and powerful people are circling the wagons to try to protect Jeffrey Epstein's reputation, right? This is a guy who at this point has been known for years to have pled guilty to these 2008 charges. This was an open secret. And so Steve Bannon goes along though anyways, and he films this documentary. Now what's interesting is he starts talking about the documentary and he starts saying, I'm watching our second hour now. Guys were blown away. I didn't think it was as strong at the time, but I was wrong. Need huge part about threat of AI versus reality, threat of climate change. And this is where the notes start going back and forth of how can we get you to think of other things? So part of the conceit of this big interview of Jeffrey Epstein was to try to humanize him and actually present him as this genius, everyman, quirky guy with a few flaws, right? They knew they couldn't run away from the crimes. To quote, in Bannon's words, yes, 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 of course, but we must counter rapists who traffics in female children to be by world's most powerful, richest men. That can't be redeemed. Can't redeem the unredeemable. You are a lot of things, which we will show, but you are not that. Bannon is aware that, like, they can't fully embrace the Epstein thing. They have to kind of make it about more than that. And if you see the YouTube clip going around, that's what that is. And it's been so interesting to watch the reaction, because you see, even for people who've been prepped with the idea that this is basically propaganda, some of them still fall for it. They post things like, you know, oh, bro is casually confirming the world's conspiracies because he's talking about 2008. But guys, that's the whole deception. They're like trying to be like, hey, this guy, this horrible monster, he's going to tell you the secrets of the inside club. So you think more, that's the whole thing. That's how they're getting away with this. It's not some kind of, oh, he happened to want to talk about this. This is all premeditated. This has gone through revisions. They even called Jeffrey Epstein the smartest guy in the room.
Look, you're the smartest guy in the room. You know that.
It's honestly ridiculous anyone believes the false conceit of, you're obviously the smartest man in the room. You could tell us the world's secrets. I mean, this guy, honestly, he talks about some of his engagements, like with the Rockefeller board, and he tries to say that owning a calculator is why he got that.
It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator, where it could, by putting in the numbers.
Bro, he looks confused even saying that.
It would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced.
What was George Jetson's boss? What's Mr. Spacely? So like Mr. Spacely, like tried to explain some shit that George created.
The most important parts of business.
Somebody just walked him through the
calculation. Places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering the numbers, and the numbers of companies. Portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board, potentially sit on the finance committee?
So we're honestly supposed to believe that Jeffrey Epstein got onto this prestigious Rockefeller board because he had a calculator, but also that he's the smartest guy in the room, the smartest man on Wall Street. And let's not talk about those horrific crimes he committed, because, you know, he's not really such a bad guy after all. But it wasn't just Steve Bannon that was trying to humanize or giving advice on how to humanize Epstein. It was also Richard Branson, the famous billionaire. He was caught emailing Jeffrey Epstein saying, "Dear Jeffrey, it was really nice seeing you yesterday. The boys in water sports can't stop speaking about it. Anytime you are in the area, would love to see you, as long as you bring your harem." I don't know, that's not that ambiguous, guys. I think we can imagine what that means. But anyways, he says, one, I think if Bill Gates was willing to say that you've been a brilliant advisor to him, that you slipped up many years ago by sleeping with a 17-and-a-half-year-old and were punished for it, that you've more than learned your lesson and have done nothing that's against the law since. And yes, as a single man, you have a penchant for women, but there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, something along those lines. He's giving him PR advice. How to get your reputation back. Hey, Jeffrey, privately, I loved you. You can come back anytime with your harem. Jeffrey Epstein responds, nice seeing you. Thanks for your hospitality. I appreciate your public relations thoughts. Now, according to the New York Times, a Branson representative said the two had a business meeting and stressed the women were adults and had not attended the meeting. All above board. That's what everyone says, by the way. Remember what Elon Musk said, right? That's the playbook. Admit nothing, deny everything. Speaking of, remember Howard Lutnick, who we showed on video saying that he had never seen Epstein since 2005.
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Although also calling him the greatest blackmailer ever.
This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever.
Well, also according to the Times, Lutnick said he spent zero time with him, even though there are emails basically to the contrary, where Epstein is saying, nice seeing you after the conviction. I mean, these people, not only are they lying, they won't even admit when they've been caught lying. But now let's talk about Prince Andrew, too, who was caught lying over a woman at some kind of a party. I mean, just not a good, this is just not, this is not doing you any favors, you know. I know Prince Andrew soon will probably be on the comeback tour. It's going to be a bunch of highly paid PR execs. Maybe Steve Bannon can jump in, shoot another 5-hour podcast trying to rehabilitate him. Like, Prince Andrew, what's the secret behind the royal family?
Look, you're the smartest guy in the room.
But again, has he admitted anything?
That's going to be the new thing. You're the smartest guy in the room. What's your secret?
What?
Has he denied everything? Now, we should also probably talk about Noam Chomsky as well, the guy behind the book Manufacturing Consent, which in hindsight, maybe we should have suspected something. But either way, he also sends some reputational advice to his buddy Jeffrey Epstein. He says, I watched the horrible way you've been treated by the press and public. It's painful to say, but I think the best way to proceed is to ignore it. When the vultures dearly want is a public response, which then provides a public opening. In general, I think it's best not to react unless directly questioned, particularly in the current mood. That's the best advice I can think of. Noam. Now, he sends that to Matthew Hiltzik of Hiltzik Strategies, who is a also famous PR guy, I guess, trying to help Epstein, I assume, who responds, I think that is wise. Now, later talking with Bannon, Epstein loops in Hiltzik again. He says, Matt Hiltzik thought your idea was epic. Hypocrisy of the liberal left. And he says, yep, he would confidentially like to sit and help if you like. This is Matthew Hiltzik. You know, a lot of powerful people basically were bending over backwards, left, right, center, trying to rehabilitate this guy's image. And the question is, why? Why were all these guys so interested in their precious Jeffrey Epstein if they had no involvement? I mean, that's the part I can't figure out it. Because all of them deny it. All of them don't admit anything. And so what exactly is the problem? But now it's time to talk about Elon Musk's brother, Kimball Musk. He was also in the files. Jeffrey was copied on an email talking about Kimball's 40th birthday, where the password to the secret party was Riot.
Wow.
And then in all caps, Boris, the sender of this email, says, I am not joking about the password.
No joke.
This was in 2012, in September. Now that's important because a little bit later, Kimball Musk is emailing Boris Nikolic and Jeffrey Epstein, and he's talking to them about being connected with some redacted name and saying, I believe you both played a role, whatever that means. Now, whether this was at the party or, you know, right after their meeting in October, I don't know. But what's interesting is Boris responds and says, Kimball, just FYI, you better be nice
with no
to
elites.
redacted. Jeffrey goes crazy when someone mistreats his girls / friends. So better be very nice to her. Kimball Musk responds, message received, wide and clear. Then he says, seriously, I'm very happy with my time so far with Jennifer. She's great. Now, again, was that supposed to be a redacted name we just read? Like, I don't know. They've been redacting it in earlier emails. Then all of a sudden you just get Jennifer. I can't really figure that out. But what I can figure out is that a little while later, a few days later, Jeffrey Epstein gets an email. Now, we know Kimball credits the meetup and says Boris and Epstein were responsible in some way for this. But now Jeffrey Epstein's being emailed about Jen's schedule. Is that Jennifer? I mean, it seems like it because Jen's schedule for the rest of the year, and it seems like the assistant has copy and pasted Jen's response because she says, Sue, these would be dates in November, and then starts saying, you know, she can go to New York. She says the 29th to the 7th, she's free. Kimball to New York. Then she says, Kimball, Jen, London. Kimball, Jen, London to Morocco, question mark.
Going on a
and
world
she has a
tour.
break, and then it's Jen, Kimball, St. Bart's. Assuming we're not sick of each other by the end of November. Now, I can't figure out why is she running this schedule about when she's hanging out with Kimball, who Jeffrey set her up with. Like, why is she running this by Elon Musk? To be clear, I don't know. You know, there could be, I guess, innocent explanations for this. Maybe, I don't know. But all I see are constant, powerful people either being introed to girls, talking about the harem, talking about beautiful ladies, and the FBI, they can't figure it out. They have no evidence to even investigate third parties. Why? I guess because they're rich and powerful. Around the world, we're seeing resignations. We're seeing people lose their status. But here in the United States, we've got like multiple presidents in the files. We've got the world's richest man in the files, several of the world's richest men in the files. And
I mean, honestly, bro, I feel like that's why they thought they wouldn't get caught, man. You got the richest and the most powerful guys out there, you know. They thought these files could stay hidden forever.
just can't drum up any kind of evidence. It's just incredible to me. Now, I also want to talk about another rich and powerful person, and that is Peter Attia. He's a podcast bro. He's a longevity expert. And actually, funny enough, I read his book. And that's going to come into play here in a second because, oh boy, did I get some additional context. But let's start here with something that Peter Attia sent Jeffrey
That
Epstein.
boy said,
He
"Got a
says,
fresh
subject, got a
shipment."
fresh shipment.
Oh,
and then
no.
Epstein responds, me too, and there's a completely redacted image. Is that a girl? Or is this bad redactions? You know, we don't know, although we'll find out in a second because later Peter responded to this. But Peter says, please tell me you found that picture online. Jeffrey responds, got a fresh shipment, afraid not. Peter responds, you know the biggest problem with becoming friends with you. The life you lead is so outrageous, yet I can't tell a soul. Why, Peter? Why can't you tell a soul? Why don't you tell us now? Now that it's all out in the open, why don't you tell us why you can't tell a soul the secrets or the life that Epstein leads? And then we get another redacted photo, right? And then some more images, and Peter says, please tell me that's not where you actually are. And Jeffrey says, you can see the gym in the middle, just me and 4. And Peter says, I think you might have a more interesting life than the Dos Equis guy. Is this off the coast of France? No, it's my island in the Caribbean near St. Thomas. If you go to the Google Earth and type in Little St. James. Beautiful. Isn't that nice? Behind closed doors, it's beautiful. In public, you know, we'll hear about what a monster this guy is, right? But behind closed doors, when nobody's watching, oh, it's beautiful. There's some other stuff Peter Attia said, which I'm not going to get into. I don't think it's very, appropriate for medical professionals to be saying such things. But, this wasn't all business, right? This wasn't just doctor-patient kind of stuff. There's a lot of guy talk, a lot of banter between the fellas about ladies. And maybe that's why Peter Attia says that hopefully Jeffrey Epstein is in town when I'm back in 2 weeks. I go into Jeffrey Epstein withdrawal when I don't see him. So guys, these two were close. I mean, apparently so close that Peter Attia goes into withdrawal when he doesn't see him. Peter Attia says, are you on island?
You know why he going to withdrawal? Because he ain't getting no more action. Without Jeffrey Epstein, that well will be dried up.
Jeffrey Epstein says P Beach, probably Palm Beach. And he says, what do you do when you get there? Jeffrey Epstein, guess. Peter Attia, besides that, I mean, they're not even trying to hide it, guys. This is barely code at this point. You know, what do you do? Guess. Well, besides that, Jeffrey, we know what you do, right? So it's so funny that the FBI's like, we don't know. We can't tell what's out there. We have no evidence, right? No evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties and then proceed to dump on us a ton of evidence, at least to investigate, right? I'm not saying these people are guilty. Obviously, all of them deny, don't admit, blame other people, say other people are responsible for everything. So that is taken as a given. I am not accusing anyone here. I'm just saying, seems like we got a few leads here, fellas. Some people to look at. Now, I want to address the fact that Peter Attia has actually responded to this whole debacle. He says the following email is what I sent my team last night. I sent a similar version to my patients as well. You put your trust, your credibility, your hard work, what we built together, and I take that responsibility seriously. You deserve a complete and honest account of what did and did not happen. I apologize, I did not get this out sooner. I wanted to be thorough. He says, I was not involved in any criminal activity. My interactions had nothing to do with his abuse or exploitation of anyone. I was never on his plane, never on his island, never present at any parties. That said, I apologize and regret putting myself in a position where emails, some of them embarrassing, tasteless, and indefensible, are now public. So it's this apology, he addresses some things, and he says that some of it's just banter, right? Like I said, it's just guy talk, whatever that means. He claims that his got a fresh shipment was in reference to a photograph of bottles of metformin, and then Jeffrey responded with a photograph of an adult woman. I responded with crude, tasteless banter. He says one line in that exchange about his life being outrageous and me not being able to tell anyone is being interpreted as awareness of wrongdoing. That's not how I meant it at all. What I was referring to poorly and flippantly was the discretion commanded by those socials and professional circles. The idea you don't talk about who you meet. I don't know, Peter. This seems like revisionist history. A little bit. I mean, personally, to me, as I'm viewing this, third hand, just from the outsider perspective. Now, Peter says he did ask Jeffrey about his 2008 conviction, because all this happened afterwards, right? He characterized it as prostitution-related charges. In 2018, I learned that this was grossly minimized. I was incredibly naive to believe him, and then later explains that in 2018, November, he read the Miami Herald investigative article, told him he needed to accept responsibility for what he did, and said he even asked Epstein to provide therapy to Epstein's victims, which is an interesting approach to have here. Now, the funny thing is, there are some more emails between Peter Attia that we need to read, because remember that he said he read this 2018 article From the Miami Herald, I believe it's this one by Julia K. Brown in November 28th. It's about Jeffrey Epstein assembling a large cult-like network of underage girls. But in December, Peter Attia said,
I mean, bro, allegedly, these guys are guilty. Cause you know, why would they be in the files in the first place, bro? Yeah, but y'all seen what Elon said, bro. He broke down the formula and all these guys are following it. So, I mean, it's really up to you, bro. It's your perception. You can believe it or you can deny it. That's up to you.